So, by now, I'm pretty sure most of us have seen that Reddit post, which was about potential spoilers for Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. And honestly, this one seems to have a lot more ground than some of the other spoilers we've seen. Now, I know there's been tons and tons of spoilers, and in my honest opinion, so far, all of them are an absolute train wreck. Now, I don't want to talk about these spoilers. Other channels have already done that, and that's fine. But what I want to talk about is, can we really, and I mean really, get a satisfying ending with the sequel trilogy? And honestly, I think the answer is no. I don't think we can. Now, there's reasons for this. So, first, I want to talk about Han Solo. Now, Han Solo, as we saw him in the sequel trilogy, he reverted back to smuggling. You have to think, he went from being a champion of the rebellion, a hero, to back to smuggling. Now, for those who kept up with the EU and know about the EU, Han Solo did stay within the New Republic. He became a general. He became, a very big hero within the New Republic, and he was there, face first in a lot of major battles, especially against the Thrawn trilogy, as well as the Yuuzhan Vong War, where he unfortunately lost Chewbacca. But, in the EU, Han was there. From what we've gathered with the new canon, Han helped liberate Kashyyyk, which he did in the EU, but then he went from being a liberator of Kashyyyk slash, champion of the rebellion to, I think in the book Bloodlines, it said he was like a race car coach. He was coaching someone to race because he didn't want to be a part of the New Republic anymore, which kind of was like, what? And then that gig fell apart and he went back to smuggling. Han Solo went through a time of regression rather than progression. I think a lot more people would have liked to see Han be that champion, be that hero. I mean, wouldn't it have been a more interesting timeline that Han was smuggling not because he failed at being a father and everything else, and he just went back to what he thought he knew best, but wouldn't it have been more interesting if Han went back to smuggling because he was trying to get underground allies to help aid the New Republic, people who were willing to fight dirty and hit the First Order where the New Republic couldn't without causing an open confrontation. Because, see, it's been canonized, the First Order was doing this. The First Order was helping a new crime syndicate rise in the void of the Hutts, the void that Jabba the Hutt's death left. So it would have been an interesting concept that, Han Solo went to smuggling to try to help the New Republic and try to basically fight a shadow war until the New Republic got their thumbs out of their ass and engaged the First Order in full-fledged conflict. But instead we didn't get that, and unfortunately we see Han die trying to save his father, and he just fell down a shaft. But of course now the rumor is Han's going to return to his son as a ghost or a vision or whatever, and that's what's going to turn Kylo back to the good side. It didn't work the first time, so I'm trying to figure out why would it work the second time. You get where I'm coming from here. But we got a regressed Han Solo. And honestly, I like the other version that I gave, because I think that would have been much more interesting. Han getting criminal organizations, scum, and villainy to hit the First Order where the New Republic couldn't. Would have been an interesting concept for the galaxy far, far away. And to continue on, the biggest thing that's still talked about today is Luke. Luke was bastardized, in my opinion. And if a lot of y'all watch this video, I believe y'all believe the same thing I do. Luke was bastardized. He went from being the champion, the champion, the return of the Jedi, the savior of his father, the person who helped bring down the Sith to an old grumpy hermit who believed the Jedi should die. So for those who do know the EU, Luke did rebuild the Jedi Order, but he rebuilt them as soldiers in a way. He still believed in the Force, and Luke believed that there is no dark and light, that there's just the Force, and depends on how the user, wields it, though he still recognized the dark side is a real thing, just like how the light side's a real thing. But he allowed his students to use dark side powers. Like, if you play, the Jedi Academy games or Jedi Outcast games, you can learn dark side powers. Not because he was luring people down the dark side, it's because he was finding balance between the light and the dark. Pretty cool stuff, right? And we know he helped the New Republic greatly, lead in many battles and many wars that, honestly, they would have been lost without him, especially during the Yuuzhan Vong War. But in this version, we got a Luke that kind of distanced himself from the New Republic, believed that, the New Republic would be fine without the Jedi. Okay? I mean, I guess I kind of understand that. Apparently the Force ghosts have been helping him to help train and rebuild the new Jedi Order, or Luke's Jedi Order. But then, well, we saw what happened. Everything crashed and burned, and when the galaxy needed the Jedi most, when the galaxy needed Luke Skywalker the most, he turned his back on it. He turned his back on his friends, his family. The very character that we saw defied Yoda to save his friends, the very character that we saw face down the Emperor and didn't kill his father and instead put all of his faith in his father to be redeemed. To see that character go from that to what he was in The Last Jedi, it's just a complete 180, It's just, time to backtrack. And it's really sad. I think a lot of people would have preferred to see a Luke Skywalker who was truly the Grand Master of the new Jedi Order. A Luke so powerful and knowledgeable in the Force that he didn't go to Ahch-To to die. He went to Ahch-To to learn, to deepen his understanding of the Force, so he could come back and defeat Snoke and help redeem his nephew. Because here's the thing. Snoke was led up to be this all-powerful dark being that was even speculated he was more powerful than Luke, and it's why Luke had to go to Ahch-To to train. Of course, now we know none of that's true. We know none of that is, well, it's just not true. Instead, Luke just decided, no one should ever be a Jedi, and the Jedi never should have existed, because, the Jedi not existing or would have totally stopped the Sith. The Jedi never being creative would have totally stopped something like the Mandalorian Wars, the Jedi Silver War, the Dark Wars, or even the Galactic War, which is based off the MMO Old Republic, or even Darth Bane for that example. The Jedi throughout the Star Wars galaxy, did they have their flaws? Absolutely. But the thing is, they helped store peace and balance to the galaxy more times. Revan, who was the Sith Lord, he forgot his memories and he came back as a Jedi, and when he learned about his true identity, he didn't revert back. He said, no, the light side has made me stronger, to the point where he was able to defeat his former apprentice, Malak. The Exile, who was a very interesting story arc, but she helped rebuild the Jedi and stop the Sith Triad from basically destroying what was left of the Force. Well, I can go on and on about good old EU stuff, but that's not the point. Luke was just bastardized. We got a Luke that trained Rey once and then completely gave up on her because she was lured to the dark side. And then we get to the case of Leia. Poor Carrie Fisher. And the character of Leia was denied a death that everyone would have accepted in The Last Jedi, when she was blown out into space. At that moment, I remember being in the theater, and I bet a lot of you remember this too, but at that point, I accepted that. I accepted this is Princess Leia's death. That said, we didn't get that. We got Mary Space Poppins. Good times, alright? Now, Leia hasn't died, even though it's speculated in The Last Jedi she's going to die peacefully. Which is, why is it she got this peaceful death? Han was stabbed by his son and thrown down a shaft, and Luke overexerted himself to pure exhaustion to where his body just gave up on him. But my biggest issue with the Leia situation right now is part of the speculations and possible spoilers. Leia has taken over training Rey. Like Rey needs any training all of a sudden, because it's been canonized that she just downloaded all of her training from Ben. So if she has Ben's training from both the Jedi time and the Snoke time, Knight of Ren time, I guess, why would she need training from Leia? And plus, the thing is, as much as I love Leia as a character, she's no Jedi. You know, she obviously knows of the Force, and yes, it has been canonized that Luke gave her a little bit of training, like just a little bit of training, but Leia, just like in the EU, said, no, this isn't for me, I'm going to stick with the New Republic. But the big difference between this Leia and the Leia of the EU is, we don't know how long Leia in the Disney canon was a Jedi. In the EU, Leia was a Jedi for a decent while until she, cast it aside and said, hey, I'm sorry, Luke, I just don't want to do this. And plus, the other thing is, with Leia's lightsaber, it's just like, if that's real, where the fuck was it the whole time? Excuse my language. Didn't mean to say that, but it's just like, literally, where was it? Where was her lightsaber? Why didn't they ever show it until now? Well, the reason being is because they needed plot convenience. And I guess they picked up that the whole, oh God, we created a Mary Sue. We can't have this Mary Sue. Rey needs a master now. Well, we've killed all the Jedi, and we've killed Master Luke. Fuck it, let's make Leia the new master. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The Rise of Skywalker just seems like it's just going to be a bunch of convoluted ideas glued together that we're all going to be sitting there scratching our heads going, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And what I'm saying is, it's not going to be a satisfying ending for our original heroes, is because a lot of our original heroes were denied a noble death, denied a heroic death. Han died trying to save his son. He failed. So, okay, there it goes. Luke was bastardized and intentionally made to fail. Now he's gone. And Leia, she failed at leading the New Republic. She failed at being, a leader. So she broke off from the New Republic to create the Resistance. I mean, this is not the story I think a lot of us wanted for our old heroes. We didn't want to see our old heroes as they were or bastardized. We wanted to see our heroes' progression, see what they became. The biggest defense that I hear for what Disney did to the original trilogy heroes is that they loved the fact that they showed us that it doesn't matter how your heritage is or how great you are, you can always fall. And they said it makes them more humanized. It really humanizes the characters to show us their failures, when the original trilogy movies already did that. Y'all want to know why Disney did this? Y'all want to know why Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, and Rian Johnson did this? The answer's very simple, folks. They wanted their heroes to be the saviors of the galaxy. Their heroes to pick up where the old heroes failed. They wanted their heroes to bring balance to the Force. Their heroes to defeat the Sith. Their heroes to put Palpatine down properly, as Daisy Ridley has said in an interview. And guess what, Daisy? It didn't have to be Palpatine. We've all seen that interview where it's like, oh, it had to be Palpatine, it had to be Palpatine so we can put him down properly. No, it didn't have to be Palpatine. Disney, Kathleen Kennedy, J.J. Abrams, they all did this intentionally so that they could say, well, it was our heroes that were truly the saviors of the galaxy because the original cast people failed. And it's because, unlike Marvel, alright, after Iron Man 1, Disney showed interest in Marvel and bought them out. And pretty much ever since then, Disney has had like a very strong grip and creative control over Marvel. They didn't have that with Star Wars because Star Wars was already made. You know, it had 3 trilogies. It had tons of books, comics, games, lore. Even the Clone Wars animation show was good. And Disney knew for a fact that if they bought Star Wars and did a hard reboot on everything Star Wars and said, okay, you know, we're going to redo Star Wars, we're going to make it our own, fuck off, people would have a problem with that. But the pure fact that Disney, one, destroyed all the EU, or made it Legends, completely decanonized so much history in lore that was built in Star Wars just so they could put in their version of Star Wars on what they believe should be Star Wars. But they knew they couldn't stop the heroes because the movies are already made. So what do? You bastardize all the heroes and make it where your heroes are the saviors of the galaxy. They basically made the original trilogy heroes. Their fight was pointless because in the end they failed. It almost brings a tear to my eyes that this company, instead of embracing what was before them and truly building off of it, they had to reset the galaxy to a state we've already seen, destroyed all of our old heroes, just trying to prop their heroes up, and so that they can say, our heroes are the savior of the galaxy, yours isn't, fuck George Lucas, because that's basically what fucking happened. The end, and they keep propping this movie up as like, this is the end of the Skywalker saga. Sorry. Skywalker saga ended with Return of the Jedi, and that's the honest God truth. Because this sequel trilogy has been nothing to do with the Skywalkers. Nothing to do with the original cast. You can say, oh, but they were in these movies, you know? It was continuing their story. Was it? Was it? Truly, ask yourself. Was it? What purpose did Han Solo have? Just to give Rey some motivational speeches and die. What purpose did Luke have? To train Rey for one day, then immediately give up on her, and then die. And what is Leia's purpose in all this? Well, if the spoiler is true, it's to form a new resistance, train Rey, and then die. I miss the EU. I wish they kept that. I understand the EU, especially after Return of the Jedi, was a convoluted mess. But you know what? At least it was good. And at least they honored our heroes. And even in the Clone Wars animation series, that series made us appreciate the prequels more. Nothing, and I mean nothing, Disney has done has made us appreciate any of the other movies more. It just made us miss George Lucas and his vision. It's made us miss what Lucasfilm under his leadership was doing. Now, Rebels was good. I will give credit to that, though you can tell that Dave Filoni, his hands are really tied. He couldn't do what he was doing in the Clone Wars. Disney wouldn't let him, because they said the Clone Wars were getting too violent. Rogue One was a good war movie, but was it a good Star Wars movie? No. But it was a good war movie. And Solo was completely unnecessary, and they wanted Solo to be that new Han Solo so bad so they could start their Disney version of Han Solo. And with the Kenobi series coming out, it's been confirmed that the Kenobi series takes place during Solo. So we're going to have more of that strange Han Solo and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm at a loss of words, folks. I'm sure I will post a link in the description if you want to hear this plot leak from Geeks and Gamers and Thor Skywalker and a few other if I find good content. But as I said, right now, Rise of Skywalker is just a dumpster fire. And there is some things in isolation I can appreciate, but honestly, you can't sit there and say this is the end of the Skywalker saga when the Skywalkers have had virtually nothing to do with it. You can sit there and argue, well, Ben Solo, he has Skywalker blood. He's not a Skywalker. He's a Solo. And that's one thing I also liked about the EU, is that there was a clear definition, a clear difference between the Solos and the Skywalkers. They weren't the same thing. They were very different. I really miss a lot of those old stories. And I think back to a lot of stories that was being announced that we'll never get under Disney, like Star Wars 1313. Could have been an interesting story. The book series Sword of the Jedi about Jaina Solo. I mean, you got to think the EU had stories going up 150 years after Return of the Jedi. It was about Luke Skywalker's great-grandson or great-great-grandson. I can't remember at the moment. I got nothing else to say. Just talking about this has kind of upset me more than I thought. You can call me a little bitch for that, that's fine, but for someone who's grew up with Star Wars and has a lot of Star Wars merch and toys when he was a kid, I don't know. Kind of feels like you just lose something, you know, you lost something part of you. Very, very strange feeling.